Hey guys, I'm Kazi and I'll be covering some basic animation tutorials in Unity today. So firstly, there's two types of animations we're mostly going to deal with. It's the in-editor ones and the imported ones. And for today, we're going to stick to the in-editor ones. So first thing you're going to notice is that your screen might look a little different compared to mine, minus the game objects. These are just simple. You might be missing this animation tab. So the way to get this tab, you go to Windows, Animation, hit Animation again. You're going to see a small pop-up. You're going to drag that and place it beside console, whatever. That's how you get this tab. First thing you're going to choose is you're going to choose a game object that you want to manipulate. Like you want to choose what animation you want to do with what objects. So when you see this, you're going to see this create. You can hit that and then you can save it as whatever, but make sure it's in the animation folder because if it's not in the same directory, there's an issue. So I already did that with my ball and you're going to see this screen. Now here, you have a record button. This record button is basically going to see what changes you made to your ball and then make a keyframe for that. But first you want to see what change you make. So you add property, we're going to transform, we're going to change the scale. Now you see these diamonds, these are the keyframes I was talking about earlier. These keyframes define the animation sequence and they're often used for looping. So let's first move this to 25. It's directly in the middle. We can observe it more clearly. And we can hit record. But we're not going to be moving the ball, right? We said we're going to transform the ball. So let's go to transform. And now once we hit record, you're going to see it turns to red. So it means Unity is going to notice the changes now. So let's make our ball bigger, like so. And now we can stop the recording. Now you'll see that there's two more keyframes added here, right? That means that there's a change during that time. So now we can preview our animation. And then you see it's a seamless animation. Like we did not add any frames in between. Unity took care of that itself. So that's just one basic animation. So let's now try to make the ball bounce. All right, so now that we made the ball pulse, we're gonna try to make the ball bounce, okay? So we're gonna go here, create new clip. Let's make it ball bounce one. And you see how it's default selected to scenes? We want to change that and we want to save it to animations. Not imported, just regular animations will do. So now we hit save. Now we have this new animation called ball bounce one, right? Usually we're fine with this, but industry standards usually 24 frames per second. So you want to set sample rate to 24, right? And then we could move it down to 110. But first we want to add a property. We want to transform. This time we want to do position, right? So we can move this to like 110. Yeah? Okay. Now we want to record, but first let's move this to the middle. So we want the keyframes to be here so it can loop, right? So we have our our ball here. To make it bounce, we just want it to come down, hit that, and go up. The level of this is 2.8. So we're just gonna change this to 2.8. Do you see how it's like basically bouncing? But it was here originally. We don't want to do it yet because it serves no purpose. Because we forgot to hit record, right? So we're gonna hit record, turns to red, so it's gonna notice any changes. Now we're going to do this 2.8. You can stop the animation now. And now, if you see, this is called scrubbing, if you want to go frame by frame, but it goes down and there. But when you preview this, you're going to see an issue. Slowness isn't the issue. The issue is, feels like it's floating, right? So we have to change that. So before we actually implement this in Unity, I feel like it'd be easier to show what actually happens to a ball when it bounces. It happens very quick, so we don't notice it, but this is captured on a slow motion camera, and we'll observe what actually happens to the ball. It basically squishes, then energy, conservation, physics, and then it basically comes back to its original shape. So now we want to make this in Unity to feel like the ball is actually bouncing instead of just floating. Alright, so to make it look like the ball is bouncing instead of just floating, we have to go through the curves. So this place is called the dope sheet. We just want to toggle it to the curves, right? Now here, what we want to do is make this a more profound V shape. So the way we're going to do is we're going to hit the middle one. Now, it was clamped by default. We want not the left, not the right, but rather both tangents to be free. So this would allow us to move this node right here. Now here, we could make something like this, but you can clearly see the effect of doing that. There we go. At the end, the loop isn't finished. So we have to make a profound V without crossing that blue line right there. So after doing this, you'll see there's a more natural bounce to it. And it feels like the ball's floating in the air, for a bit before it bounces again, like gravity in real life. So we're just gonna fine tune it. There's a little bit of lag still, so we're just gonna make it a little less V shaped. But you can tell when the loop ends because of this diagram, but this is basically what curves is. I won't finish it because this is gonna take a while. The animators spend a lot of time making sure the curves are accurate enough that it feels natural. If you remember the ball, the actual physical ball and how it bounces in slow-mo, it kind of squishes. So we're going to add a squishing effect by clicking on Add Property, Transform. This time we're going to add a scale. So to add a scale, you go to Add Property, Transform, and then hit the plus on the scale. And now you see you have a third frame now. So now we're going to hit record. We're going to move this the instant before it touches, so like right there, and we're going to make this y into, let's say, 0.9. So there's a flat edge, but we also want to change the position because now you can see there's clearly a gap. So we can move it down to like 2.6. Okay, that's touching. So at this point, there should be a squish and it should look like the squish reverses. So let's see what happens. We're gonna stop the recording. So the issue now is that the squish is throughout the whole thing. So to change that, we come here, we Control C for copy, we paste it, but instead of pasting it here, we need to paste it here, right before it meets the ground. So now it's going to maintain the same one. This is the exact frame where the ball changes shape and then it goes back to normal, back up to the top. So this happens very quick in real life, and this is only 24 frames, so it's going to feel there's a glitch or like there's a change in shape very instantly. But in real life, your brain processes things too slow to realize this change. Now you have a natural bouncing ball, but after more tweaking, like you can even place it closer to make the effect more profound. But this is the main gist of it. So now we're gonna move on to animators and how to open a door. So I know what you guys are probably thinking. We saw a ball pulsing, a ball moving, and that's too basic. Where's the fun stuff? So this is probably a fun thing that you'll probably use in your project. So basically, we have a door and we have a third person controller. Now, if we play the scene and we move, nothing happens. This door is not dooring. This door doesn't function. So that's why we're gonna have a proximity sensor, and then we're gonna have the door open and close. It's a very layered process. The first thing you wanna do is your movement axis is centered. So you wanna change that to pivot. Next thing, go to the animation tab. So there's no animations currently associated with the door. So we're gonna hit create. We're gonna do door underscore open one and hit save. So now we're going to hit record and it's going to notice any change that takes place. First, we want to add property. We're going to transform it. We need a rotation. Those are our diamonds right there. We're going to move our playhead trimmer all the way to the 1 minute mark. We also changed from 24 frames per second to 1 minute, which you can do by setting the sample rate to 60. But now that the player head trimmer is up to there, what we want to do is you want to come here to the y-axis rotation. We're going to make it 90. That's basically the rotation done right there. We can stop the playing. As you can see, when we hit play, the door opens, right? Now we go to the project window and now we search for the animation that we just made. So our animation was called door door open one, I believe. Is this door open one? This is door open one. So now we don't want it to loop because why would the door constantly be opening and closing? Unless your game wants that, of course. So we're gonna disable the loop time now, and now we're gonna explore the animator controller. If you go back, like let's remove all our searches, you're gonna see that now that we have a door one controller. To make it easier on ourselves, we're gonna rename this to door underscore controller. So now a animator controller, you know it as it's by two squares with lines, and then this is the actual animation itself. Just one movement, this is two movements. Now, once we double click this, you're gonna get this window. That's how you get this window. It might be a pop-up here, you're just gonna drag it like before, place it beside animator. Let's test out this sync. Let's see what's happening. So now the door opens, right? But the door is not closing. So let's try to make the door close now. But if you notice, this had a bar there and it was constantly showing what was happening. So these are called state machines, and you could change the default state. Like if we playtest the scene one more time, you can see that we don't have to do anything. The door is constantly just open because the default state is now door open after as soon as the player enters, right? So we want to change that because we don't want intruders in our home by the door opening just by itself. So let's make a new state. We're gonna create empty, and this new state, we can click on it, go to our inspector window, and we can rename it to closed. Now let's right click this, and now we could set it to layer default state. Now that it's closed, we want it to be open though, right? So we're gonna right click this again, make transition. You won't see anything, but once you move your mouse, you can see an arrow. So you're gonna connect it to this node called door open one. And now, once you playtest the scene, there's a slight delay, but the same thing happens because we don't have a parameter set that, okay, we make this transition when, like if this, then that, right? So we want that to say set place. So you were probably on the layers tab. You want to move over to the parameters tab. After you come to the parameters tab, you want to hit the plus, hit trigger, and you have to name your trigger, but name it camel case because that's gonna come up in your inspector window later. So in camel case, we're gonna name it player proximity. Now that we have a parameter, we're gonna click this transition, and now we need this player proximity to come over to the inspector window. So we're gonna hit add on the conditions list, and player proximity is the only one there, so it's gonna auto-populate. Once we playtest this scene, you'll notice that this door isn't opening, but we're gonna hit this radio button. It's opened. So now we could just walk through, right? So now that the door opens by the press of the radio button, we want it to close. So instead of making another state, we could Command D, duplicate that. But I'm sure you know this is for opening, right? But if we go to the inspector window, instead of 1, if we put -1, it does the reverse, which is close. So let's just rename it to door close now. Now we're gonna make a transition from here to here. Now that we made a new transition, we wanna hit here and do the same thing. We're under conditions, so we're gonna hit plus. Player proximity is gonna auto-populate because that's the only one there. So before we playtest the scene, we just want to make sure that this transition has no exit time. Because if we give it an exit time, there's an overlap between door open and door close, and we don't want that. So now let's hit playtest. Now with this hit, this should open. By clicking it again, it should close. Cool. So now we have a functional door. Now we want to reset the state machine. So we want to make a transition from door close to exit. So you just want to make sure that exit time is not on. So now it's the fun part. We're going to create a proximity trigger. So in the hierarchy, we're going to come here. We're going to create empty. We can say this is called door trigger. It sounds fun. So now we're gonna come over to the inspector window. We're gonna add a component, and we're going to add the box collider component. So we want it to be centered now because we want to move it in a place where we can detect if the player walks in or not, right? So let's do that. This is a bit too high. Let's make it there. And that should be fine. Now under this box collider, let's make is trigger enabled. And we want to add a script. The script, I already made it before, so I don't need to do it, but you can make a new script here. And then I named the script door trigger, so that's my script. And then for the animator, it should be my door. Let's playtest our scene one last time then. Let's say the door opens on command. It does. So that's basically a gist of how much animation you can do in Unity. There's much more to cover. Now you have more better appreciation of how much effort that goes into it. So I hope this gives you a good overview of the basic animations in Unity.